Thanks for joining me. This is the second part of my question in regards to bullying complaints and performance management. As I said yesterday, in the text version, I'm going to do a video and this is it. So what I'm looking at today is the management of the bullying complaint from the perspective of the investigator. I will say at the start that if you're going to conduct an investigation internally following a bullying complaint which was resulted from performance management, there is a much higher potential for a conflict of interest and bias. After all, the person who's made the complaint is under performance management, and there may have been some discussions already about the potential of separating that person from the organisation, terminating that person if their performance doesn't improve, and now they've made a bullying complaint. The complaint is about a manager, often a senior manager. So the organisation may have some preconceived ideas about what's going to happen. And as I said, that is a high level potential for a conflict of interest and perhaps some bias. So under these circumstances, I do recommend outsourcing. Okay? So it's important to remember what the Fair Work Act says about when a person's bullied. And it does say in section 789 FD2 that behaviour will not be considered as bullying if it is reasonable management action carried out in a reasonable manner. So when I, as an investigator, am tasked to investigate a complaint of bullying following the performance management process, there's three areas that I look at. Firstly, is this a management action? Secondly, was the management action warranted? And thirdly, was the management action carried out in a reasonable manner? Now, this takes a high level of investigative skill involved gathering evidence, analysing evidence, and making findings. So the first thing is this a management action? So what do I look for? I look at the policy of the organisation. Has the policy in regards to performance management been adhered to? And that's usually a pretty easy hurdle to jump over. Generally, if someone's under performance management, it is a management action. Okay. Secondly, was it warranted? Quite simply, you need an explainable reason why you are undertaking performance management. Now, that's not too hard to do. However, from my perspective as an investigator, what I have to do is gather evidence. Evidence that the performance management is warranted. So, for example, documents, records, perhaps sales figures, anything that you are relying on to say there's an issue with performance. So for example, if it were the person's supposed to start at 8:30 in the morning, they're regularly getting at 9:15, I would want to see some timesheets. I want to see some records to show me that the person isn't complying with what they're required to do. If it's a salesperson that, for example, is not selling, not meeting their targets, I'd want to see their records. I'd want to see records of other sales reps in a similar area to see how many calls they're making, how many appointments they're making, how many new clients, how many sales they're making. So I can look and compare what the person who's made the complaint is doing compared to what other people are doing and make a judgment as to whether this performance management is warranted. So it really comes down to having a clearly explainable reason. Now, the last one is how it was conducted, how the management was conducted. Once again, I look at your policy. What does your policy say you should do during performance management? Then I look at the next step is procedural fairness. Did you allow the person procedural fairness? The first thing, the right to know. Have you clearly explained what the problem is? Second, the right to respond. Have you allowed the person to respond and listened to their response? Okay. Have you detailed not just what the problem is, but also some strategies to solve the problem, to be fair to the person, to say, this is the problem, this is how we can solve it together, and this is the outcome. Have you set appropriate timelines? Have you given the person an opportunity to improve? Have you set reasonable levels to improve? You're not asking for the impossible to go from 10% to 100%, maybe steps along the way as far as what you're doing. So they're the things I look for as an investigator. Firstly, was it a management action? Usually pretty easy to solve. Secondly, was it warranted? Was it clear that this is the reason the person's being performance managed? And finally, was it conducted in a reasonable manner? Now, Generally, and well, when I say generally, all of the complaints that I've received in relation to this, all of the complaints I've investigated, have all had other elements. It's not just that. They complain about a number of other things. And that can vary from my manager doesn't talk to me, my manager speaks to me in an aggressive manner, my manager sets tasks that are beyond me, my manager is aggressive and yelling at me all the time. For that, I need to gather evidence probably from other people. What have witnesses seen? Have witnesses seen this person being yelled at? Have witnesses seen the person being ignored? Does the manager ignore everybody? Does the manager say good morning to everybody? Is this one person being excluded? Very rarely do I find bullying complaints relating to performance management that only talk about the performance management. They generally add a lot of other things in. Now, just because a person under performance management complains that they are bullying doesn't mean it's a vexatious complaint. The complaint may be genuine, and you've got to go through the process of gathering the evidence, conducting interviews with the complainant, with the respondent, with potential witnesses. You've got to analyse the evidence in relation to what the Act says, what's reasonable, what the policy of the organisation says, and then finally make a finding on whether or not you believe that person has been bullied in the workplace or has been subjected to reasonable management action. It's very important to remember that if you do make a finding that the person has not been bullied and you find in favour of reasonable management action, the person has the opportunity to make an adverse action complaint. Everybody in the workplace has a workplace right to make a complaint, and they can say that if you proceed, say, to termination, that the termination was because they made the complaint and not the actual performance management itself. So it's really important that you get it right. It's really important that you cover all your bases and you have a very explainable reason why you found that it was not bullying, that you've adhered to what the Act says, and that you've conducted a comprehensive and thorough investigation. As I said, it is very complex. It's not something that you want to sort of attack in a willy-nilly fashion. I recommend outsource to an expert. If you need help, please contact me. This video is also going up on my YouTube channel. The link will be in the text of this video. So please go on the YouTube channel. There's a lot of other videos, a lot of the question time I post on LinkedIn. I always also do a video for. So please subscribe to our YouTube channel, and I look forward to answering some more questions in the future. Thanks very much.